right, so hey everyone, how's it going? So today I've got your boy JC on today's giveaway or something.
Yo, what up? Camera's
Uh,
over there. Forgot it's not over here.
so today we're going to be talking about does the source material matter? We're going to be hitting a couple different topics on this. Which one do you want to do first?
Dude, it's your show. It's up to you. Whatever movie, whatever topic you want to run in first on the adaptations, let's get it going.
Oh, I see your little sign back there. I just noticed it. Very
Yeah,
nice.
just and that's
Um,
what it's there for, man. It's there for
so
eating some stuff.
because it's the most relevant, I guess let's talk about Avatar and does the source
Mhm.
material matter? So, uh, M Night Shyamalan, have you heard or read any of the things he said about his movie adaptation?
I suppressed his movie. I believe it is the worst movie ever made in existence, mainly because it shat on the source material.
It's true, it did.
I don't. I feel that anything he says about the movie, anything that he tries to backtrack, walk back, anything does not matter. It's he whitewashed the movie. He missed key crucial plot details of the actual overarching first season, which was what the movie is based off of.
Yep.
You can't really, and the problem with it, like this show is, it's long. It's an American anime in a way. When it's that it even rubs me the wrong way saying that. So I'm assuming it's probably going to run other people. But it's a long show, and you can't really break down a full 22, 23 episode season into about 2 hours and have all the necessary work and all the necessary character building that you need to have to get to the climax. So, like, it was, I blame M. Night Shyamalan, Paramount, everybody. But in that way, like, it's bad, man. That movie is trash. I repressed it. I don't want to hear, like, I hate it. I hate it. I will argue about it being the worst movie.
I mean, that's fair. I even will go so far as to say, even if you didn't know anything about the source material, like you never seen the cartoon or whatever, it's still a bad
Hmm.
movie because of
Yeah,
movie issues, not
yeah,
because of like lore stuff per se.
yeah. Nothing is earned as a movie. It's not earned. Like the emotional climaxes of the movie, like climaxes, the emotional plot points, they're not really earned because they didn't do anything to earn it.
Mm,
Like it was just like, hey, you're supposed to feel emotion. It's like, but why?
yeah.
And then the CG was terrible too. So
Yeah, I actually pointed that out in the video I just made, but Appa's face, it's like they
mhm.
took a picture of somebody and tried to make Appa look like a person instead of like
Yeah.
how he looks in the cartoon. I thought that was super
and
bad.
people might be like, well, uh, it was an older, like it came out in 2009 or 2010, I can't remember, but it's like during the same time James Cameron's Avatar came out.
Right, which is why they couldn't
And
call the movie Avatar. They had to call it The
yeah,
Last Airbender.
look at that CG. Like you can like that movie or not, but look at that CG compared to that.
Yeah.
The technology was there, they just didn't use it right.
Yep.
Even the, just
Yep. So you would say it's important to adapt the source material correctly to make a good movie.
yes. Depending on what you're trying to convey. If you're trying to, like, in that sense, it looks like they were trying to retell the story. Just, hey, we are Nickelodeon, we're Paramount. This is one of the biggest shows on Nickelodeon history, which is one of the biggest cartoon channels for kids. It's like, granted, it's not up there with the iconography of like SpongeBob or nothing like that, but it's a pretty top tier Nickelodeon show. So they're like, hey, we can make money off this. Let's just regurgitate it, make it live action, and we should make money, which it should have if they were doing it properly, if they gave it to the proper director instead of a guy at the time who was doing Signs and The Lady in the Water, like movies like that, which weren't really good. A director that was on the downslide of his career till his resurgence recently. So it's like in that case, the adaptation matters for what you are looking to do. And that one they were looking to copy, just missed the mark by a mile.
So, would you say that what was I going to say? So, would you say that it's in the directors lately, especially with movies that are like adaptations of other things, would you say they're given too much liberty to do what they want?
It depends. Like it's like if you're talking about like Marvel and DC to an extent, to the extent of changing characters and how they operate, like putting them in different situations that you haven't seen, like say in the books, comics, whatever, any other where they're drawing the adaptation from. Uh, if the character is the same, like they have the similar ideals, similar structure, you know what I mean, to their actual character and philosophies, but throwing them into a new situation that's just brand new, that I feel is fine. But it's if you change the character, now you're getting into deep water.
Yeah.
Now you're messing things up. If you adapt it and don't change the character, because that's the problem.
I would agree. So, is there anything else on Avatar and like how, like just
The
any
show,
other notes?
yeah, you're wrong about the show. It is
Which
the
part?
greatest. It's the greatest. It's the greatest show I've ever seen.
I mean, that's your opinion, bro.
I love it. I love it. That's why I love it so much. I have the DVD copies. I have the video games. I have some VHSs because for the first season, I think they got some VHSs. So I have one VHS, I'm pretty sure, somewhere. And I have the Blu-ray box set too. So like I love this. Like it's my that's where I stand.
I mean, that's fine.
You know, yeah.
All right, so you want to talk a little bit about Star Wars?
Oh.
I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, I guess let's talk about Star Wars.
All right, so Star Wars, obviously, 4, 5, and 6 came out first, followed by the prequel series, and then, 7, 8, and 9. So in the time between when 4, 5, and 6 came out and the release of the new movies, there's been a lot of like books and things like that, obviously released. Whether it was Disney, whether it was I don't even know who the previous person was. Whether it was just like Lucas.
I think it was just Lucas Films, and then whoever they contracted for publishing and writing and all that stuff.
Right.
But, yeah.
So seeing as how it
Fox.
started, Fox.
Yeah, because I remember Fox had at least the I can't speak.
Distribution.
But yeah, they had the rights for Lucasfilms. Like that's what Indiana Jones was released under. That's what Star Wars was also released under. So they could have had a hand in it, and that's why everybody was really excited. Well, at least movie buffs were really excited when Disney, in this aspect, like obviously when Disney bought them because they can finally slap the Fox logo back on Star Wars, and I was like, what the hell? But yeah, and so Fox may have had their hand in it.
So seeing as how George Lucas was the primary, like he wrote 4, 5, or 1 through 6, and he gave people rights more or less to write stories about Star Wars, which would later become the legacy and extended universe.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, do you think it is more important to build upon the 6 movies that he established, or the extended universe that other people created?
It's, in my opinion, for the total audience, for the canon, if you're looking to expand the canon, you got to expand off the movies. The movies came first. The movies are what it is. If you're looking for lore that you want to have, then go for the extended universe. But don't be mad, right? If say, like, let's say in between episode 6, Return of the Jedi, and episode 7, The Force Awakens, which wasn't George Lucas, that was Disney, all that. But let's say Luke was doing something, right? In the books, let's say the new trilogy, the sequel trilogy was kind of different. And just for the argument's sake, just for this. But in the books, Luke was out there like on what is it, Coruscant, running like kind of like Senate or something like that. Which I think actually Leia was kind of doing that. But whatever. In the books, I'm not 100% for sure. But let's say Luke was doing that. But in the movies, Luke was out there destroying like in between, like in like episode 7, they would say, oh yeah, Luke was out there dismantling the former things of the government, of the empire. You can't be mad that they didn't stick to the source material when the source material is the movie, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my opinion on that. Like it's the source material for Star Wars is the only thing that matters, and the source material is the movies. Everything else is extra.
I agree. I we've talked about this before, but I would even go so far as to say anything not like created by George Lucas is pretty much just fan fiction. Do you
Yeah,
think I'm off base on that?
not necessarily. Like I feel like there you can have his blessing, and he can be like, yeah, I write off that that is canon, and I would buy that. Like he would be if he says, oh no, the I don't know if he has, but if he comes out and says, oh, the Clone Wars cartoon, that is 100% canon. That actually happened. That's canon. All that stuff, right? If he says that, I'll be like, okay, that is. But if he doesn't say that, that is all fan fiction. That's the one stipulation. Like if he writes off and says, no, I like this. This is what it fits the characters, or this is what I was thinking even at the time, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's canon. That works. All that. But if it's not from his mind, I couldn't care less.
Same. I pretty much have the same opinion. So with 7, 8, and 9 being as controversial as they are, some people enjoy them, some people don't, some people love them, some people hate them. So being as controversial as they are, do you buy like when somebody says, "Oh, well, this is rooted in extended universe"? Do you think that adds to the credibility of these movies at all?
No, not at all.
Pretty
It
much
doesn't
for the
matter.
reasons we just talked about.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's rooted in an extended universe. It's not. If you followed the story arc, which I think they did a decent enough job, at least in the first movie, and Force Awakens, it's after that I feel like it was really where it was like, oh, it's more extended lore, it's more this, it's more that. It's like tougher to get in. But it's like if you can stick to the actual character and where they would left off and give it a reasonable landing spot for it, okay, that's good. But going off of extended universe and be like, well, in the book, in these 5 books, yeah, Luke was here, Han was here, then here, then here, and then here, and that's what made him here. Like that, I don't care. Like he could just be there. Like it
Yep.
doesn't add anything, and it's like, well, that's the reason why this and that. Like it's a lot of things that you don't need, and it's like, yeah, if you want filler, I consider those filler. Like in an anime, in a TV show, in whatever, there's always filler.
Mm-hmm.
There's bottle episodes in live action stuff. There's those are all filler stuff. If you like to read filler, watch filler, go ahead, do it. But don't start saying, well, in the book at it, the books don't matter in this thing. It's not like going in Harry Potter. It's not like Hunger Games, where the books came first. The books came after the fact.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
this is a pretty good discussion because we're going to spin into comics now. Uh, Obviously, Marvel and DC more than the other stuff because the other stuff hasn't been adapted as much.
There's been notable successes, but it's like
Right.
those are
It's one every few
few.
years, and it's like
Yeah.
it's either from Dark Horse or Image, and maybe one
Yeah.
or two in between, but not nearly as much.
Not enough
Um,
to be very credible. Like even Vertigo had that one, but that would probably be like
which one was that?
DC V for Vendetta.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so
Vertigo
it's
is
like,
actually owned by DC
yeah,
now,
it's
so you
DC,
could
so it's
rope
like,
that
it's not
in.
really, it's not really small, but it kind of is very weird. It's a
Yeah,
weird space it occupies.
like
So.
their properties
Yeah.
are still, I think, under the Vertigo label. If like if you go to a comic
Yeah,
shop today,
yeah, it's still like its own. It's like I view it as, what would it be? It'd be like Paramount, I think, owns Nickelodeon, but
Mhm.
Nickelodeon is its own separate thing,
right? Yeah,
So it's
that's
kind of like,
exactly how it
hey,
is.
yeah, the parent company, like AT&T owns HBO and stuff like that. That doesn't mean HBO is just out there, whatever.
Yep. Okay, so now moving into like I said specifically DC and Marvel. So moving into that, now that we've kind of established what we consider to be source material, whatever comes first, whether it be cartoon,
Hmm.
book, anime, whatever. So do you think that the source material should be referred to more than it is with Marvel and DC and like their movies and how they adapt them?
This is a very slippery slope. I think Marvel, especially at the beginning, I think they were doing a decent enough job at keeping to the source material while carving their own specific, like, hey, this is not the source material. This is something new. Like, yeah, it is, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Now later on, they're going further and further away from that, just spinning off into whatever they are, whatever they want to do, pretty much, and they're using these characters and to tell their own story, right? Instead of and it's not even using the character. But in DC's side, I feel like they haven't been referring to the source material much. They've been too busy drawing things that are like, oh, well, this worked. This one image in this comic worked, and this one image in that comic. Let's just put them all in the same movie, and it's like, not really.
You can definitely make the case for that with BVS.
Yeah,
I don't
BVS
think we need to
is
talk about how much of a train wreck that is.
BVS is hugely with that. Like, there's a lot of things that you're just like, yeah, this is like when you take BVS out of context, every scene I like, but it's like these don't fit together. It feels like an amalgamation of nonsense, of just cool imagery.
Yep.
And I feel like they need to go back to the comics more so. I think Marvel also needs to back step a little bit. They don't need to go full reverse throttle, but they do need to back step a lot. The main issue, like how I believe I said earlier, is the character. It's when you start getting away from the character, which I do believe DC has been more successful than Marvel in a way. Like keeping to the characters. Now you can make a case for the Joker movie. Like that didn't really
I still don't really consider that a DC movie.
But it's like, and Aquaman is a very touchy one too. But it's, for the most part, they stick to the characters and they're like telling their own story. While in Marvel, it's, well, we have this character names, here's their set of powers, and let's just do whatever the hell we want with it.
Right. So do you think it would be like some of the movies would come out better if they did stick more to the source material?
For Marvel's sake, Captain Marvel, I believe, probably would have came out much better if they would have backtracked it, because I don't know much about comics, but I feel like at least her origin in the comic have to have been better than the origin that they showed in the movie. Like, it'd have to be, it'd have to be more impactful, it'd have to be more emotional than what they showed on screen. Because I would just, and I may be, because I'm a white male or whatever, I'm a male, so I got a male perspective, but I've talked to females that seen it and they share the same view, like why, like it doesn't really move them.
Yep.
I feel like with that type of stuff, it would help them. But with something like Guardians of the Galaxy, changing the entire characters, because they pretty much did. Changed every characters. It made it beautiful, I thought it made it work tremendously. And that going back, it might not have worked. So it's a very slippery slope. You know?
Yeah, so to clarify on that, the Guardians of the Galaxy in the movie are not the original Guardians.
Yeah.
The original Guardians that. were shown
in Guardians 2.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was played by like Sylvester Stallone.
Yep.
Miley Cyrus was a robot head or something. I'm pretty sure.
Really weird.
That was the original Guardians. Yeah. And then, like, I've known they changed Tony Stark's importance in the in the comics when the MCU launched. Like, he wasn't as important. Now he's like kind of like, hey, no, he's a big name hitter. Same with Captain.
So the Avengers, like the MCU, made them more popular, yes, but they were all like Marvel. It wasn't like Marvel wasn't like DC, where it was the big three. Marvel's popularity was always kind of just Marvel's popularity.
Yeah, but it was stagnant on
where they're pretty much
Marvel's popularity. I always thought was kind of the big three, where it was Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four. Which is the big three.
I mean, that's true, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it was at the same caliber as like Batman, Superman,
When
and Wonder Woman. Like
I would say the only
the
person
DC
that would
trilogy.
be up there would be Spider-Man in
Yeah.
that caliber.
So making them more relevant, yes and no. I mean,
Yeah.
even in modern comics today, they're
Especially in
not
pop culture.
huge. Yeah, pulp culture. That could be a separate entire discussion, really. People blowing stuff out of proportion and like things blowing up in culture and stuff like that.
We can have just an argument on that on two comic book characters, one DC and one Marvel, that have been appeared in two movies within the past 4 years.
Which one?
We can talk about like that, like pop culture and exploding and relatively deserving it with Deadpool and
Okay.
Harley Quinn.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's not go
we
there.
can talk about two characters from both sides that have been in two movies at least.
Yeah. We don't need to go there. So
We could.
I'm kind of making stuff up now because I'm not sure where to go. But so I, to answer my own question, I think it would increase the popularity if they stuck a little bit to like the source materials. Specifically, I think this is gonna sound crazy when I initially say it, but just kind of give it a second. I think Marvel's too ambitious with the storylines they've tried to adapt. Primarily looking at Civil War and Infinity Gauntlet. Now, Civil War was a little too ambitious because there was like, what, 10, 12 heroes at most?
Yeah, it was because isn't in the like it's everybody against one
everybody
another.
gets
And
involved.
well, everybody in the MCU is only like these 20 people.
Exactly.
And then two of the major hitters are just not there. Hulk and Thor, they're just not. Get out of here.
No.
Captain Marvel's not introduced yet. It's like,
Yeah.
Even though Wasp wasn't in there, and she was kind of introduced at that point.
Yeah.
At least at the tail end of Ant-Man, it was teased.
Yep. And then Infinity Gauntlet, I know some people are like, what? You think it was too ambitious? It was over like almost 20 years. But it was, because of what story they were trying to adapt. It really suffers from the same problems that Civil War had, because at the point of Infinity War, there was maybe 2 or 3 more extra characters. Like, there really wasn't, and none of them were substantial. Like, none of them made a huge difference. Captain Marvel is probably the one that sticks out the most.
But that was in Endgame.
Yeah, which was, I mean,
yeah, I get
cut
what
it
you're
however
saying.
you want. The two together were Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah. And then they changed the name even because it was Infinity Gauntlet, and they were like, and the sequel to Infinity Gauntlet is Infinity War.
Yep.
So they changed the name of what they're adapting.
Yep. And it's really kind of crazy, and I'm gonna get into this more when I do my MCU like go through
Deep
breakdown.
dive, yeah.
But it wasn't even really Infinity Gauntlet, because like I mean, so Infinity War, it definitely wasn't an adaptation of Infinity War.
Yeah, no,
definitely not. It was more an adaptation of Thanos' quest, which it's pretty self-explanatory. That's his quest to go get the Infinity Gems, and that's how he builds the gauntlet or whatever. But yeah, we don't need to get too much into that. But I really think so. I really want to redirect this towards the MCU directors having too much power, because then they're just being super loosey goosey with the kind of things they're adapting and how they're adapting them. My main concern is they put so much emphasis on the gauntlet. I thought about this the other day, like the gauntlet, right? It's never explicitly stated in the movies that he has to make a fist to use it. However, the directors came out and said that he has to make a fist to use the gauntlet, any of its abilities, which is dumb. Then the other thing was, so it was made out of Uru metal, right? Iron Man,
I guess,
makes it out of nanobots, and it has the same effect as the original one.
I would say it has a better effect because the original one crumbled.
So why? Why make Uru so important then? Like it's so
because the dwarfs, the 15-foot tall dwarfs, are dumb.
Yeah, like
I guess
it's
science
so
trumps magic, man. Apparently,
in some cases, I guess, but like, yeah, it's crazy. So
science.
To go back to the original question, does source material matter? And do you use that when you're trying to explain what's happening in a movie to somebody who's not knowledgeable on source material?
Look, source material matters for adapting. If a movie doesn't make sense because of information left out, and you're like, well, you got to go look at the book that it's adapted. You got to go look at the show that it's trying to do. If you got to go look at this, you got to go look at that. No, that is not. The source material does not matter at that point. The source material, I believe, matters only at the point as creation and actually creating it. After that, when it's released, like say, because this is pretty much, and we're not really talking about like the TV shows of adaptations, like hey, the Flash has a show, Green Arrow has we're not really talking about Daredevil and stuff like that. We're not really talking about that. We're talking more about the movie adaptations. And so if you're trying to adapt that, and then you're like, oh, say, and what was it? I want to say something that you would know because all I'm thinking in my head is Harry Potter. But there's a lot of things like in Harry Potter where it's like, why I don't like that because they veered too far away from the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, the movie is now its own separate thing. It shouldn't rely on the book. And if you have to go to a book, Star Wars is like that, especially in, I think, The Last Jedi. It fails heavily, and in the novelization of The Last Jedi, it fills in the gaps, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but that doesn't matter. If somebody tries to argue things, oh well, in the book it doesn't matter. I feel like if they adapt it into a movie, all the key important things should be in there. Should be in there. Because that's the story you're trying to tell. And the source material matters for that much. But if you're trying to use the source material to justify a bad movie being good, that's where it doesn't matter. You see. So it's a yes and no. It's a yes and no answer depending on the context. And creation, yes. If you are making a comic book, a comic book movie, if you're making a comic book TV show, if you're making just an adaptation of a novelization or a children's book, doesn't matter, or even a TV show in general, if you're making a movie adaptation, you must pay homage, you must pay respect to the source material. But it is not on the consumer, the watcher of these movies, to look at the source material and try to fill in the gaps. It is not on them. So to them, I feel like the source material does not matter. But to the creator, it has to matter. Yeah.
I see what you're saying. So, but by using your definitions, you would say that just for example's sake, the sequel trilogy are bad because they're bad adaptations of source material, right?
Yeah, you can argue that, yeah.
I mean, I do, because
I would argue that, yeah.
Because you can root something in source material, but when you twist it so much that even if you read source material and barely understand what the adaptation was, like you did a bad job. You're a bad director or a bad writer.
And I would also argue with the sequel trilogy, like source material doesn't have to be. I want to say source material doesn't have to be something really old. It doesn't have to be something from 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago. It could be the previous thing. They like anime does this a lot, where they make the anime based off the manga, and they put in filler because there's no more manga at the time, so they have to put in filler, which you've stated. Mm-hmm. So I'm pulling your lines. If I'm wrong, it's you're wrong.
That's factual.
So they would make filler, right? And as soon as that manga comes out, the next week there could be a new episode of the anime. Like, it doesn't have to be super well established in the pop culture. It is the previous thing that comes before it. If you're building on something, that is where the adaptation comes from, in a way.
Yep, I definitely see that. So what was I gonna say next? So
Star Wars is egregious on it.
Star Wars, like the fandom menace is rough. Like you get all the stands coming out defending each of the trilogies, and it's rough. And then the apologists, like, it's okay to like things, but you don't have to try to make excuses to defend why you like it. You can like things even if they're bad. Like if other people think they're bad, I like a lot of things people think are bad. Like Paul Blart. Like the movie's great. I love it.
I would say that the prequel trilogy, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, they are not good movies. Do I like them? Hell yeah. They're not good movies. It is, and I'm heavily blamed on George Lucas on that. The writing, the direction of them. The only person that actually really knocked it out of the park was Ewan McGregor. So
But at least, okay, so my argument would be at least it was consistent. You know,
yeah,
the same guy
yeah,
who created the original ones, so he made it make sense in the overall
yeah.
big picture.
It was whatever he wanted to do, so it fit
Yep,
for
that's
the
my
most
biggest
part.
thing.
Yeah, for the most part, it fit. There was a few plot holes, but nothing to really get hung up about.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not sure what else I wanted to do because we pretty much established. Um, you should, if you're gonna adapt something, whether it's like a comic book movie or something, you should go out of your way to adapt as much as possible. So in one comparison I wanted to make, I thought about this recently with Kara because I started recently listening to Punk Goes Pop, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's basically a punk band will take a pop culture song like "Glad You Came" and do like a heavy version of it. Um, they're
Gotcha.
presenting it in a different way, but
Mm-hmm.
but in its core, it's still the same. Like the lyrics are the same and things
Yes.
like that. It's just being presented differently. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of approach that these directors need to take instead of, oh, I just want to put my mark and twist this into something I can call my own. Instead, just put
Something.
like a different spin on it. Like I think
I.
if you've ever seen the animated adaptation for Batman Hush, I think that one was really well
Mm-hmm.
done because it was very small twist on who the villain was, but it was
Yeah.
enough to make it different.
Exactly. I feel though I think pop gold punk. I don't know if it'll fit, and I know that you said this might be a slippery slope. I think it was before. Speaking of like third party comics,
Hmm.
but like the mask is. I wouldn't know if you would classify that. That is, the comic adaptation is extremely violent, extremely graphic, extremely gore, like dark, and obviously the Jim Carrey movie, which I presume
It was a
we've all seen the
kids
Jim
movie,
Carrey
right?
movie. It is completely the other side where it's fun, it's wacky, it's cartoonish because it's Jim Carrey, you know. But the core principle is still there. The principle of the comic is submitting yourself over to this agent of chaos, to the filth of the city, to become something in this city that glorifies bad guys in a way. So I think like that keeps the core while changing. You know what I mean?
I see that. Yeah,
So I don't know if you would classify that as like your pop goes punk kind of thing, or punk goes pop, or
it kind
whatever.
of fits.
Yeah,
I haven't personally read the Mask comics or anything like that, so I
yeah,
don't know. I have first-hand experience with those, but
yeah,
based on what you described, I would say so. Yeah, definitely.
yeah. And the major key difference between those two, though, I think at the end of the Mask comic stretch, because it was only lasted like 3 years. At the end of that, the main character, I can't remember his name, Jim Carrey's character in the movie,
Hmm.
he submits full control over to the Mask, and in the movie, it's reversed. The Mask kind of submits to him, and he doesn't need it anymore. So
So the last thing I just remembered I wanted to talk about is something I think you can you know make your case, but you may have a double standard of. So I understand that you are okay with changing like the race of characters, right? Um,
to an extent, yeah.
right. So um, so with Avatar, obviously you're not okay with them whitewashing the movie because they changed
And,
everybody's race, not just the
yeah,
Eskimos.
except for the Fire Nation.
No, they do, dude. Those guys don't look Chinese. Are you kidding me,
No, no, I never thought they were like Chinese necessarily. I thought they were Southeast Asian.
bro? They're way
And
too white for that.
no, they're like Indian, man. They're like not Native American, like they're Indian.
Based
You know,
on
is what.
the research I
And
was
it's
able
like,
to do, the Fire Nation was based off Asian descent or Chinese
yeah,
ethnicity.
mm,
The water tribes were supposed to be Eskimos, and then I can't
yeah,
remember what the Earth
Native.
tribes were supposed to be.
Well, I thought the Earth King. I thought like Earth Kingdom was more Chinese than, and then the Fire Nation was more Japanese. And
Well, even
my
still, those are
just
some
quick, yeah,
dark dudes to be
yeah.
Japanese.
And it's
There
like, but
are
it's
dark
still like,
Japanese people,
how
but
can
like,
you whitewash everybody, right? They whitewashed every other race, and then still make the bad guys a darker skin complexion, a minority group.
yep.
It's like, come on, guys, this show is mostly like the reason why there's just people from a bunch of different places, quote unquote, a bunch of people, like it's not, but from a bunch of, it's to show that like yeah, there's good and bad people on both sides. There's like it doesn't matter, who you are. It doesn't matter where you're from.
Excuse me. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in the original cartoon, there's not a single person of color. They're all the same color.
Like this both like I feel like Katara and Sokka, I think are POCs, are people of color. I feel like there's a
Yes, I
notable
would agree.
difference between, and Aang I think is a notable difference than say Zuko, but Zuko to Toph, I feel like the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Nation are pretty equal footing.
I actually didn't notice a difference between Aang and everybody else, but definitely the Water Tribe.
Yeah,
They're a little bit darker.
yeah,
than
the Water
everyone else.
Tribe, that one is I can clearly see like Native American, like that's where they drew from, like
Yeah.
the Native Eskimos of the Northern America, like Canada, Alaska kind of area. Like I can see that 100%. And there's even like more of like the Alabama backwoods section where they go into the swamp and there's kind of like with the southern draw waterbenders, and it's like you can see that I feel like the Water Nation has driven heavily, the Water Tribes I should say, driven heavily off of Native American culture.
I could definitely see
It's like,
that.
but it's like in the movie they just didn't care. They're like, they're white.
Yep.
They're the good guys. They're
except
white,
for the
and
bad
it's like,
guys.
come on.
I definitely see that. So now that we've kind of established that you should, even with races and stuff like that, you should try to strive to make them accurate. So what do you think about these directors that are going out of their way to cast like to gender and race bend just because?
If it's just because to do it, I do not like it. If it's like, hey, like I know the big thing is stop taking my ginger roles, and it's what comic books have been notably doing. Comic book adaptations is if there's a ginger character, let's make them African American. Let's make them black.
Yeah,
If
DC's
they're
been
ginger,
really bad with that.
yeah, if they're redhead, we're making them black. And it's like, okay, but why? Like you can make a case. I've talked about MJ in the MCU, whether you want to say she's Mary Jane or not. She MJ
That's
is
their
what they
adaptation of her.
Yeah, that's MJ. Like yeah, she's African American. Zendaya is, I believe. You look at the Flash series, Wally West, and I can't remember Layden something. I'm pretty sure is his name, and Candace Parton as Iris. Like they,
DC,
I believe, are supposed to be
Supergirl.
Yeah.
They switched out. What's his name? Jimmy.
Jimmy Olsen.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, these are all supposed to be redheaded people, and it's like not at the point where it's too. I have never really noticed. Like I've loved the Flash. That's the most comics I've read. I've read the Flash comics, and I've never really was like, oh, I don't like the fact that they changed their race. I am more like they changed their character. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you're just doing it for the reason to do it, it's not good. If you're doing it for, no, this person plays the character better than, say, somebody with red hair, if it's a redhead, or somebody that's white or whatever. If they play the character better, right, I would rather have the better portrayal of the character's values than the look of the character.
I understand
that's
that.
my opinion. Like if Spider-Man, if Peter Parker tomorrow was, say, Hispanic, right, but he was better at being Peter Parker than Tom Holland was, which I think Tom Holland is doing a fantastic job playing Peter Parker and playing Spider-Man. I think, like, say, if there's somebody that is Hispanic that says, hey, I can do this better, and that proves that he can do it better, make Peter Parker Hispanic. I don't care, because it's the core values are still there. It's still the same character, just with a quote unquote. I'm not going to say it because it will open backlash. Because it will be like, oh, what did he say? You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to push too many buttons.
Well, I don't want to, like, the way how I was going to say it is with just a new, like, ethnicity, let's say. that like but you're still the same person, still the same values, still the same dude that you know.
Mm-hmm.
He just looks different slightly. Who it doesn't matter that much.
I
But
definitely
if you're
understand that.
changing the character along with the skin tone, now you're like, even if you weren't changing the skin tone and you were just changing the character, I'm like, oh, I don't like it. And then you're adding even more to it.
So more and more directors have been, especially with the race
Mm-hmm.
bending, they've been going out of their way to cast different races. You think that's
Mm-hmm.
bad? I do. I don't care for it. People will say, "Oh, well, you're Mexican. Why aren't you happy that somebody,
Yeah.
Mexican is on the screen?" It's like, well, I don't want to be pandered to. I want to see the
Yeah.
comics or things that
If
I've
you're going to make,
enjoyed
I
adapted.
feel like if you were the core characters, if you're going out of your way to make them a different color, different ethnicity, if you're going out of your way to say make Peter Parker Hispanic or African American or what have you, and it's not due to like the character or the actor portraying him, if it's just like we need to have more color diversity on screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like what, like if you're going to do that, like there's hundred, not I don't know about hundreds, but there's dozens of heroes that are people of color. Look at Black Panther. He is an African dude. He's from Wakanda, which is a fake African nation.
Yep.
But look at how good that did. You did the character right. You gave it way there. And if you're looking, well, where's the Hispanic people? Well, look at Blue Beetle in DC.
Yep.
He is a very look at, and if you're looking, well, where's the African American people in DC? There's Vixen. There's a Green Lantern, which is my personal favorite Green Lantern in John
Yep.
Stewart.
There's even a
There's
Middle Eastern
Static.
Green Lantern.
Yeah,
Static
there's
is a huge
Static.
one.
There's even Black Lightning, who has his own TV show, which is I really like on CW. Like, there's a lot of good characters out there, and there's Storm in Marvel that's African American. There's a huge, vast thing to pull from, and it's like if you want to make your universe, because all these things are going to, because of Marvel, blame Marvel for cinematic universes and all that. They all kind of want to do that. If you want to make it more colorful, put the heroes in there that are that race.
Exactly.
You know, like don't try to. I do feel like gender switching, though. Get that for Aquaman kind of fits more for what his background is in a way.
Gender?
Not gender, race switching, because I think Jason Momoa is more like Polynesian, like Samoan kind of thing, and that fits more of like the oceanography and all that stuff. I feel, in my sense, I feel like they are. And I know I could be in the minority, I can be that, but I feel like they're more ocean wise, more ocean conscious than say white Europeaners, which is what, yeah.
I would agree with you if the movie took place
Yeah,
anywhere but America.
Yeah, yeah, it didn't take place. Well, it did. It took place in Greece. In one scene, in a couple scenes.
Like his dad, like the making them both different races just because, I thought was kind of dumb.
Yeah, that was like, it's just weird, man.
Yeah.
But I think it fits the kid. If they needed to do, I think they needed to make the Atlanteans look more like him, like Jason Momoa, rather than making them all white. Because
but that's how it was.
It looks like,
he was only he was only brown because of his dad.
Yeah, I get it, but
whatever you want to say.
I would have preferred it the other way, but that's just me, and I know I'm probably in the minority.
But
they're at
the bottom of the ocean. How are they going to get a tan?
Ocean light, magma, dog.
It's so different for no reason other than they wanted to cast Jason Momoa.
Oh, look, I'm fine with Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa is great.
He does fine, but I'd rather have somebody more accurate. Because from my viewpoint, he's just another diversity hire, almost.
Yeah. I feel like I liked it. Like, I don't know.
If they wanted to bring in another Justice League member of color, they could have easily done Jon Stewart, like you pointed out.
Or they could have. I would, even if they wanted to do a person of color that was female. I really like the character Vixen. I really think she's strong. And being from Michigan, maybe I got biased because she's Detroit based. Yeah. But she's a very strong character, very interesting background. Make her work. She's a working class person too. She's
Right.
not like uh Batman, who's a billionaire. She's not Diana Prince, which is a princess. You know,
Right.
and God, she's just, hey, I'm a fashion person. Like I have to make clothes and things for people. Like I got this job, and I'm also doing this on the side.
Right.
And it's like I feel like if you want to do that, there's so many key things to do before gender or race swapping. But I understand their thought process. Like it's not like I don't understand their thought process. Because it's like, oh, it's the big name character. It's, hey, we have, let's say we go the other way, which would be egregiously backlash. Let's say if they went like, hey, Cyborg is now white.
Yeah.
You know,
I think what you just pointed out is a double
yeah.
standard by all the studios, really.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, well, Cyborg. Why do they do that? Well, Cyborg's a bigger name character in DC. Mainly, I would point to say the Teen Titans cartoon back in the early
Definitely.
2000s exploded him. But it's like, all right, we look at, and even now with Doom Patrol, he's on there, which is, and the movie and all that Justice League movie. Like you see him explode, and now he's in even Young Justice. But you see him explode in popularity, so you're like, okay, he's big name now, and we want to change it up to drive more interest in it. Let's make him white. Let's change his race, and it's. I get your thought process behind it, but it's also, why did you do that?
Exactly.
There's no point.
Yeah, because a majority of times when a race is changed in these movies, it has no repercussions. Like you can't even make the
Mm-hmm.
defense of, oh well, now the race card is going to be an issue in their movie
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
journey or character development or whatever. It's not. You can
Mm-hmm.
try to find it or make a case somewhere, but I don't think you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
I,
yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else on source material doesn't matter as a whole?
as a whole, it is. It's too tough to say. It's not a binary answer. It's not a yes or no. It's sometimes. It's the middle ground. It's gray area. It matters. Depends on where you're standing. Is how it is. If you're looking at it, like if you're trying to say, if you want to adapt the DC and the Watchmen universes, like the Clock and Doomsday. I mean, the Pin, I think,
The
is
button,
the Batman.
Doomsday
The button,
Clock.
yeah, yeah, and Doomsday Clock. If you want to adapt that, you have to look at that. But if you're the consumer, if you're watching this, if you're going to pay money to see it, or even not, if it's on TV or whatnot, and you're already just watching it,
Mm-hmm.
it is not up to them to do the research. You
Yep.
know, like it's so the source material, no, and it's like, well, okay, well, how much does it matter? Now you're getting into a slippery. Now you're getting in the like, oh, it's not really binary. It's a lot of gray area.
Right. And I like how you said that. It matters if you're trying to create something or like you're adapting it, but it doesn't matter if you're a consumer. Because that's my probably one of my number one complaints is like if I'm talking about how bad in my opinion, the new sequel trilogy is, and somebody's like, oh well, in these books, it's like, well, I shouldn't have to go out of my way to find something to make the
Exactly.
movie make sense. And I think that's
Exactly.
something we both agree on.
Especially if the movies came first.
Yep.
You know, like it should. Everything else is doesn't matter. The movies are the only thing that matters. If it's not in the movie, it's not relevant.
Yep. I definitely agree wholeheartedly. And I think that's again about do it. So thank you so much for joining me, and
Yep.
we'll look forward to the next discussion video. I'm not sure what it'll be or when it'll be, but yeah. Anything you
All
want to
right.
say before we close out?
No. Check out youtube.com/Joshua Curtis 101 if you want late night streams and the occasional podcast. Like, check it out, but if not, that's fine. That's about it, though.
All right. Well, definitely plug yourself. That's always a good thing.
Yeah,
Um, so
got
yeah,
it.
that's gonna do it. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.